So, Gen AI, where do we even start? I thought a good place to start would be this lovely infographic. This is the aptly named MAD landscape. MAD in this case standing for Machine Learning, Artificial Intelligence and Data. And this is the correct response to seeing the MAD landscape infographic. It's safe to say that there is a lot going on in this space at the minute. This is moving fast, and it hasn't moved this fast since early 90s .com boom. A lot of the tech on this screen is probably paradigm-shifting innovations in machine learning. Some of it is probably wrappers that people have put around paradigm-shifting innovations in machine learning, and some of it is people who bought .ai domain names and hopped neatly on the bandwagon. A lot of it probably won't exist in a few years, but for now, there's a lot to sift through, which brings us to our roles. Safe to say, creative technologists weren't a thing at McCann, and the kind of current state of AI has been a catalyst to my role even existing. So what is a creative technologist and what do they do? Good question. It tends to differ day to day. There's two parts to my role. One is creating proof of concepts for tech adjacent activations for our clients. So creatives come to me with an idea, and if it is tech adjacent, then I will build a proof of concept. The other half is sifting through that diagram, looking at what we might do next, what we might use in our workflows, and then handing that over to Faye to implement.
Mm-hmm. I'm Faye. I'm Creative Technology Manager, so I work on software implementations, training, change management, that side of tech. I love it. I'm very lucky. I work for IPG, but primarily with Craft Worldwide and McCann Manchester with Criss. If you've not heard of any of those agencies, then a small cross-section of clients to the side. Manchester's probably most famous for all things Aldi, including the social media presence. Other agencies responsible for the creation of the very famous L'Oreal tagline, "Because I'm worth it." If you're as old as I am, you might remember the Nescafe Gold Blend couple adverts from the 90s. Or if you've seen TV's Mad Men, then McCann were actually featured as a rival agency in the TV series, as was the Hilltop advert and song that was created by McCann for Coca-Cola. So with such a long-standing reputation, it's important we help maintain that by staying at the forefront of technology and delivering the best for our clients. So firstly, it'll come as no surprise to learn that we use Gen AI for visualization and ideation. Most recently, we've used it to sell in a new style of food photography rather than doing a traditional test shoot, so saving time, money, resource there, and that went down well. And storyboarding and animation. And it's storyboarding that I wanted to touch on first because I really like this use case that the team did for San Miguel. So what's playing on the screen at the moment is not a final delivered asset, but a take on a traditional static storyboard. So to create this, it started with some pre-existing stock imagery from the client themselves, from Mahal. You can see it's quite stylized. So they use these stock images to put into Midjourney, so to use them as reference, to do image-to-image Gen AI, with, of course, some prompts to make sure that they were getting the frames they needed to tell the story they wanted to tell. Then ran the images through Runway, so image to video, generative AI. There is actually audio on here too, so text to audio AI, and the subtitles as well, Gen AI animated. So it's a really efficient way of creating something like this, all pulled together, of course, in Premiere Pro to add a couple more effects as well and polish it up. Another example we did for Purina.
We couldn't be in the same room, it's that bad. I just couldn't be around him. Until I found Propine Live Clear.
Breakthrough nutrition that safely reduces allergens on your cat's hair, helping people and cats live closer. Propine Live Clear.
So you can see how something like that is going to give your stakeholder a much clearer idea of what they're going to get as a final product, rather than seeing a traditional static storyboard. So clients we've done this for have loved it for that reason, because it's setting their expectations a bit better. So not only is there time savings to be made in the creation of the storyboards or mock-ups, probably a better term in this case, but time savings in your post-production as well, because your client has seen something closer. So next is vubbing, or video dubbing, if you've not heard the term. If you are creating content in English, but you've got a global audience, then something like this is worth looking into. Data suggests that if you do deliver content to an audience's or in an audience's native language, then you can increase engagement up to 6 times. So that's what I'm going to show you for this first use case for L'Oreal. So this is, again, not a final piece of, not a final deliverable that went live, but a test that the team tagged on the end of a pre-existing shoot just to see what the software was capable of. So in this example, it's metaphysic. And I'll tell you how it was done, then I'll show you the result. So in this case, it's Eva Longoria, if you recognise her. She was sat on set with some cameras capturing her facial expressions, mouth movements, reading a script in English, and then she was swapped out for a French-speaking stand-in. Metaphysic took the footage of her lip movements and matched them from the French speaker to Eva. Then they used 11 labs to clone Eva's voice, but have her speaking the words of the French stand-in. Got it? This is the result.
Fais disparaître vos cheveux blancs en 3, 2, 1. C'est magique.
So you can see how that would be much more engaging for a French viewer than just reading subtitles. Scarily easy to do. Next use case, so same technology, different tool, but same technology. Slightly different use case in that this was used to repurpose an asset for a different audience, so change sections of script. So in the US, Just Eat is known as Grubhub. So it was Flawless that the team used for this example, where they shot the whole thing for the English audience, but then some audio for the US market was delivered and they used Flawless to sync it all together. So no requirement here for any separate references for lip movements. And this is a relief.
Did somebody say shots? Did somebody say grad? Me, you delivery like a G. S-N-T-T-E-A-C. Ladies. You're B-D-H-U-D. Ladies.
So I don't think that anyone in the US would know that that's how it was done, and of course a positive thing. And the team estimated, given that there was quite a lot going on, there was savings of around 30 to 50% in time and cost. You've got a lot of talent going on there as well. So if you are interested in any of that technology, it's the software used. They all do slightly different things, but would recommend checking them all out if you're interested in that sort of technology. Then I wanted to lightly touch on versioning. So this is still a POC for us, a proof of concept. So we're still seeing what the technology is capable of. But we deliver a lot of, again, video campaigns. And when we deliver those campaigns, we're required to share them in a number of different durations, ratios for different channels. It's a really manual, time-consuming task, but this tool does it automatically. So the way it works is you would start with a master asset. So it's going to be a fully finished, probably your longest format, maybe 16:9, but doesn't really matter. But polished, edited, signed off. You're going to upload it to the system and it's going to analyze it. More on that in a sec. Then you're literally going to tell it what new durations you want, what new formats you want, and it's going to automatically spit out optimized versions of them within seconds to minutes, depending on, what you've asked of the tool. So when it's analyzing them, it's separating your visuals from your audio. So with visuals, it's able to tell whether you focused on a product, whether you've got models in there, graphics. If you've uploaded audio, it's going to separate your voiceovers from your music. So what it does really well is when it's cutting a new rendition, it can tell what script has been read and it can cut it together in a way that still makes sense. Really clever. And when it's optimizing it, if you've specified that you want it for, say, a TikTok story, it's got insight as to what performs best on TikTok and will be able to say, put your product's hero shot in the first 10 seconds or something as an example. Couple of seconds probably. So it's just good. I think imaging AI rendition software has been around for a while, but it's trickier with video. So other stuff like this has been around for a while. It's getting better. So worth checking out. Other things it does really well, object and action recognition. So with object recognition, we saw a use case for a fashion brand that had done a long format lookbook type video featuring all their new season outfits. And they asked the tool to create Instagram stories that featured just their new season bags. And the tool automatically honed in on the bags and spat out an Instagram story just featuring that. And if you can recognize a bag, you can recognize the model. So they had 2 versions made, one that had recognizable models, one unrecognizable to comply with each channel's usage rights that they got agreed. And another for action recognition was a beauty brand that shot full face makeup tutorials. And they used the tool to automate cutouts of, say, a lipstick application, to take that chunk of video and push it to their PDPs. So it's more than just the automating, like it's interesting. So if you're still doing manual video versioning, then there's a few of these softwares at the moment to check out. Definitely worthwhile, save a lot of time. So lastly, before I hand over to Criss, this one's possibly my favourite just because it shows what's possible with AI and the power of it. So this is a case study for Bimbo. Bimbo sell bread products in Mexico, but the majority of their sales come from independent street food vendors. So the team came up with an initiative to provide the independent vendors with their own professional branding and create what they called the Greatest Guide. So an interactive guide to where you could find all these. Turns out there was 8,500 independent vendors that they wanted to feature, which meant 42,500 unique assets. So shit. But luckily AI is a thing now. So although it probably, would have been possible with pure manpower, it wouldn't have been feasible to have delivered this volume. And luckily it was possible, and it increased sales by 22%. Here's how it was done.
The Greatest Guide to Hochos and Hamburguesas, the world's first generative search and signage tool for the world's most creative hot dogs and hamburgers. We started by collecting data, mucho data, including location, stand name, and signature recipe. And because emerging generative AI is miraculous but hard to control at scale, we created a world-first workflow designed to turn data into prompts and prompts into food paintings that are masked, combined with generative backgrounds, dynamically typeset from one of our 6 hand-painted fonts, automatically retouched, branded, then ingested into our system as separate layers to be combined, up-redded, and output to final print specs, delivered to each vendor using WhatsApp. It all came together on the Greatest Guide.
So you might not have a use for having to create 42,000 unique assets, but it shows what's possible and scalable. So doing something like this is a little bit more complicated, and you need someone with a brain for a computer. We have one of these, it's Criss, and this is where I hand over to him.
Thanks. No pressure. Okay, so I wanted to give a bit of an example here of what we aren't going to use Gen AI for, and I thought that fine-tuning was a good way of illustrating this. Those of you who don't know how these models work, they're trained on what's called prompt-response pairs. So for ChatGPT, a prompt is a question, the response is an answer. For an image generation tool, the prompt is a prompt, the response is an image. But if you want to fine-tune a model and add a capability to it, like I'm going to demonstrate here, you need to do a couple of things. You need to curate some data where you have prompt-response pairs. In this case, I have used images of myself and descriptions of those images. I can then run them through the same code that was used to train the underlying model, and I can then add a new capability to it. So I can say, now you can generate images of Criss. Now, we use this for generating styles or brand styles for mocking up images. As Faye was saying before, we use a lot of this for selling in. But as this will demonstrate, there's a reason why you will never use this for product. On the right-hand side is the output. And I can now leverage the model to generate images that are an approximation of me in various super nerdy, because it's me, stages. Not that anyone needs images of me as a cyberpunk hacker or a comic book wizard, but this last image I think demonstrates it pretty well. That's not me. It looks a bit like me maybe 10 years ago if I had a different tattoo artist, but it's not me. And when you are selling a product, the product has to be the product. So photographers in the room, your jobs are safe. And the use cases I'm going to show next start with product photography as the cornerstone. They are the starting point. So super complicated workflow on the left. basically taking a Pixelz cutout, shout out Pixelz, you can buy me a drink later, and putting it into a latent image, using the rule of thirds, put it into a latent image, create a mask, then generate an image of a bottle of wine with that mask, replace it with the original bottle, generate a background, use a different AI model to relight it, then use a low-pass filter to put the detail back in on the label, and you end up with an AI-generated image of that bottle of wine on a countertop. Not practical, but 6 months ago, built that workflow to show that this is coming, this is possible. On the right-hand side, this is now just being released into Firefly. So these things that you could do theoretically and in the lab 6 months ago start to drop into commercially available products, right? Now, the outputs that you'll see on the right-hand side, not as photoreal yet, but potentially usable for certain use cases. But if you could do that 6 months ago and it didn't exist in commercial products, what are we going to be able to do in 6 months' time? So, repurposing of those images, this is a no-brainer, but if we then take one of those images that was created from our product shop with the Firefly generated background, we can repurpose it by just generative expand, turn it into a banner image. And we do that. So if we've got a shop, we can use generative expand with the right agreements in place with Adobe. That is now a usable asset. And on the right-hand side is showing that same banner image then pass through Runway and putting movement into the shop. So then we can use it in digital signage in store. And it's a bit more eye-catching. And again, it can be repurposed for a different use case. Important to say, these are incredibly sped up. Things don't render that quickly. But there you go. So the workflows that I showed before are immensely complicated, and they're using open source models, but APIs are coming for some of the Firefly generative stuff from Adobe. A lot of the stuff on the right-hand side there, you edit and process stuff that already exists, and if you've got Creative Cloud licenses, and you can speak to your Adobe reps and you can get access, then you can build those functions into your existing workflows. But the generative stuff is coming. We've got early access to some of these, and we're testing them. And just to be able to actually pull them into your existing products rather than having to code switch and jump between different applications is going to be really powerful. So they're not widely available yet, but they are going to be widely available in the next few months. So definitely worth speaking to your account managers about. Lastly, and I know someone mentioned this before, it's not all about production of assets. It can be about optimization and insight. So few tools on screen now that do exactly that. The top left-hand image is from a tool called Dragonfly. This is a browser plugin, which is trained on a data set which is previous eye tracking data. So eye tracking data studies that have been done over a number of years, trained a model on that so that it can approximate where people's attention will be drawn when they see imagery on screen. You can load that plugin up on any web page, hit go, and it will give you an idea about where people's initial attention is going to be drawn. On the right-hand side, we have a Creative X, which is slightly different. Video optimization, is that right, Faye?
It uses insight, like a bit like the example from the video. So it uses insight from social platforms to give you a creative intelligence score of what you've loaded into it. So it could do a bit of everything, but it's, rather than neuroscience, it's sort of logic and rules based.
And whilst it's not on screen there, down at the bottom, you've got Attention Insights, which I called out because it uses the same technology as Dragonfly, but rather than being a paid subscription cloud platform, it's a one-off license locally installed that you can have then access to on your machines. It uses the same kind of models and it has extra functionality, so definitely worth looking into for smaller outfits. So that's where we start, and this is what we filtered down to. Important to say that whilst a lot of what we showed today is output, really we're more heavily weighted towards using AI in process. The back office stuff, automation and speeding up dull, mundane tasks that, for the everyday. Then we use it quite a lot in ideation because, as we showed before, you can put together an ad concept, you can put together a treatment, you can show it to the client and get the ideas across nice and clearly without any risk. The output is a little bit of a minefield these days, which is why you've got Kelsey coming up next to talk to you about the legals. But we are more heavily weighted towards the process. Just doesn't look as good on a slide. So the outputs is what we will have seen a lot of today. I believe that is us. 6 seconds.
We shaved about 5 minutes off that. Hey, guys. Thanks.
Very well timed. I have to give you that.
That
Great job.
from us. We obviously talk fast when we're nervous because we're like, Alexandra's going to kill us. We're going to go over about 10 minutes. That wasn't there.
Okay. Cool. Let's jump right into the questions here. Okay. First one here. How do you navigate the legal side of using clients' assets in a platform like Midjourney?
Should I heard this one? We don't. We don't. Is the reality of it. Midjourney is probably the best image generation platform available at the minute, unless you go in open source and you start looking at Flux, which only released a couple of days ago. They've cheated. They skipped to the end. They trained on the entire internet. You can't use it in client assets. We don't use it in client assets. We use Midjourney for ideation. We use Midjourney for putting together pitch decks. We don't use it in final assets for that very reason. The IP and copyright considerations are just too scary.
Yeah, massive.
Yeah.
Good. Can you share about any experiment use case you were very excited about, yet AI tech was simply not there yet? Right? And you tried, but had to pull back.
Maybe I'm a pessimist, but for me, it's sometimes the majority. So I'm not going to name names, but I think like it's still new and it's still changing so fast that sometimes, how many people really excited about, I'm just going to say it, Firefly, type something in, like thought, this is going to look great, and then you're like, So, but I think as long as your expectations are not that it's going to be 100% there, and you try and find what it does do really well, like especially with my job, like if something can improve 20% of an aspect of a process, then it's still probably worth it. Yeah. But if your expectation is that it's going to spit out something perfect every single time, then you're going to be disappointed by the majority of AI tools.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a question down there at the bottom about the new Gen AI within Photoshop. How does it stack up against Midjourney? There's a gap, and that gap is closing. Midjourney trained on everything that was available, and Adobe started off training on some stock imagery that they are growing that training data, and the bigger the training data gets, the better the imagery will get. That gap will close. Yeah. Hopefully it'll close in an ethical way so that the output's actually usable and people get compensated for their art.
So when it works, it's great, right? When it doesn't, you can't use it.
Yeah.
It's got to be good, hasn't it?
Curious about the next top one here. I know that kind of ties into the next session as well, but how do you approach conversations with clients about using some of these AI tools? I mean, we know we run into them every once in a while when we're talking about virtual models, for instance, right? Virtual backgrounds. How can we? How do you do that? How do you have those conversations?
That's usually where it starts. Is the ethics and the legal and the ethics is where it starts. I think because clients come to us really excited, like, what are you going to do? How are you going to get me my stuff faster and better?
Yeah.
And you've got to give them the reality. So that's probably the.
Involve people who understand the technology is the first thing I would say. Obviously, you've got to get the legal advice, but also involve people who understand the technology, because our account team, all the best will in the world, they don't pay to be experts in Gen AI. You have to have somebody who can advise them on what is reasonable, what is risky, what is possible.
Yeah. Good. Here's a very specific one I can see.
I knew I was going to get that one.
You knew you were going to get that one. Well, you asked for it. What specific programs do you use for video versioning?
So I did not get sign off to put that logo on the screen, and I knew that would come for whoever put those questions in. Let me know, and I'll come find me after. I'll tell you.
We did ask if we could share that.
I did ask several times.
They didn't know, so yeah.
I thought like the absence of it would be stronger than it, but right.
Cool. This next one I'm a little curious about. How many image editing companies will be killed by AI in the next 10 years?
Well, if it was up to me.
6.
6.
Quote me.
No.
I don't.
But I think, Chris, you mentioned that, listen, photographers, your job is not at stake, right? You mentioned that.
Yeah, and I think it's important here to say the way that we're looking at this is a new set of tools that our editors are using. It's not, they might find that they're speeding up rotoscoping, and that frees them up to do other things. When the best way I can express this is the best images we're getting out of Midjourney, even for ideation at the minute, are generated by photographers. who know how to compose a shot and how to prompt it and what lens to specify and shutter speeds and these things that anybody can generate an image, but not everyone can generate a good image. You can give me a camera, I can take a picture. You're not going to put it anywhere. But maybe my Instagram. That's about it.
It's true. When will AI-generated video become as good as images currently are?
It's getting the gap is closing. I saw a nice example of this morning, which I was showing Faye, which I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but again, come and ask us after. Things are starting to look more convincing and realer. They still have that kind of uncanny valley sheen to them. You can tell it's AI. I imagine that's going to be the case for a good while.
One that you showed me, I thought it was brilliant.
It was brilliant, but you knew it wasn't filmed.
I think for me, I can tell something's AI because it's so perfect. So personally, you can only see it's always soft focus and it really shallow focus, and I mean it's hard to shoot anything with that depth of field. So I think you can always tell. So I think there might be a shift to people wanting stuff, like UGC, like that sort of came off the back. Now everyone wants to see the stuff that's a bit more raw. I think AI might struggle with that.
And even with the current video generative capabilities, there's a lot you still have to do in post. I did something recently which was an internal thing for one of our clients where they wanted to do an internal launch for an ad. So I had to mock up their CEO as though he was in the ad. And it was easy enough to do that with commercially available tools, but then I had to frame by frame upscale and phase swap it to get it to look right. It's not something that you can just bam. People think you just click the button, it's done.
Yes, no, it's not that simple. That kind of leads into this. Do you think there'll be new roles, skills required and needed in the future to implement these tools? And if so, in what area department? I mean, at a certain time, there was a lot about, we need prompt engineers. I mean, well, how do you look at that?
Prompt engineering is a term that won't exist in 5 years, is my opinion. I think these tools, if they want to be usable by the general populace, will have to move towards natural language. Prompt engineering is a thing when they're new, and then more and more they shift towards natural language. I think new roles will emerge. My role is new. It's only existed since January. I sit in the creative team. That was unheard of in McCann. So, yeah, I do think new roles will crop up, but I also think that these will just become tools that existing roles encompass into their workflows.
Okay, good. Just a quick last question. If I take the last one there, what is the most utilized use case by your clients in the real world right now?
Probably the reporting and like asset maintenance. What do you reckon?
Yeah,
probably background stuff potentially for all the reasons that you're saying.
Yeah, the only other thing that we're leaning into a lot is SEO and code. It's the coding speeded up so much just by access to ChatGPT and Claude, Opus, etc. That a lot of code that would have taken a lot of time is now very, very quick to do.
Okay, good, cool. Faye,
Thank you.
Criss,
Thank you.
Thank you.